Jack exposes Billy's secret deal, also says 5 words that change everything. On a pressure-soaked autumn in Genoa City, the kind where the air itself seems charged with secrets and shifting commitment, the fragile peace between the Abbott sisters shattered in a way that promised endless consequences on the young and the restless. What began as a quiet dubitation in Jack Abbott's mind turned into a full-bloated battle that would ripple through Jabot, Chancellor Winters, and every corner of the Newman route. For weeks, Jack had tasted commodity was out with his youngish family. Billy's restlessness had evolved into commodity sharper, calculated, nearly hopeless. The late-night phone calls. The unforeseen unrestricted door meetings. The guard whenever business strategy came up. Jack knew Billy well enough to fate when he was laying again not at a poker table, but with power, pride, and heritage. Jack had spent times drawing up Billy's messes, defending him to their father's memory, to the board, to investors who saw Billy as a liability. He'd believed, maybe foolishly, that Billy had eventually turned a corner. After everything, the gambling curl, the vengeance plots, the reckless media drives, Jack allowed. His family understood the cost of tone sabotage. But when discreet inquiries led Jack to a buried paper trail, what he uncovered wasn't just another impulsive mistake. It was a calculated secret deal, one that could destabilize everything the Abbotts had rebuilt. The deal in question involved a quiet cooperation with an outside investor known for hostile appropriations and commercial sabotage. Billy had negotiated a contingency clause that would give this investor influence over a significant block of Abbott Dispatches stock if certain performance criteria weren't met. On the face, it looked like a barricade against request volatility. In reality, it was a backdoor power snare, one that bypassed Jack entirely. Billy hadn't just gone guileful. He deposited himself to potentially seize control if Jack stumbled. Jack didn't defy Billy incontinently. That wasn't his style presently. The youngish interpretation of Jack might have stormed into Billy's office, voice raised, fists gripped. But this Jack had learned tolerance from times of battles with Victor, heartache with Phyllis, and power struggles that nearly bring him everything. Rather, he gathered evidence. He spoke still with legal counsel. He verified the autographs. He vindicated the coastal holding reality that masked the investor's involvement. And when he was certain, when there was no room for mistrustfulness, he called a private board meeting. Billy walked into the Abbott boardroom awaiting a routine strategy session. Rather, he set up Jack at the head of the table, adjoined by legal documents and an expression so controlled it was more shocking than fury. The board members shifted uncomfortably as Jack began, not with allegations, but with data. Dates. Transfers. Clauses. Billy's hand goggled back at him from the protuberant screen. At first, Billy tried to spin it. He claimed it was a defensive initiative, a smart business buffer. He argued that Jack was too conservative, too novelettish about heritage to see the evolving commercial battleground. He indeed tried to frame it as an insurance policy, one that would ensure Abbott Dispatches remained strong no matter what. But Jack didn't raise his voice. He simply asked one question: why was it secret? The silence that followed was more ruinous than any concession. Billy's jaw tensed. He veered, criminating Jack of micromanagement, of no way truly trusting him. The old injuries surfaced, the shadow of John Abbott, the constant comparisons, the belief that Billy would always be the reckless youngish family in Jack's eyes. Feelings burned. Board members changed ganders. The pressure was suffocating. And also Jack did commodity unanticipated. He dismissed the board. One by one, they filed out, leaving the Abbott sisters alone in the room where their father's portrayal hung on the wall, a silent substantiation to yet another fracture in his family's foundation. The door clicked shut. No followership. No shareholders. Just blood and treason. Jack stepped near to Billy, lowering his voice. "This isn't about strategy," Jack said still. "This is about trust." Billy, cornered but recalcitrant, admitted he was tired of staying for Jack's blessing. Tired of being alternate in command. Tired of feeling like he'd to prove himself over and over. The deal, he confessed, was influence. A way to ensure that if Jack ever pushed him out, or sidelined him again, Billy would have the power to fight back. It wasn't about profit. It was about fear. Jack absorbed that. Times of stock contest distilled into one painful verity: Billy didn't believe he was safe in his own family. For a moment, it sounded like Jack might explode. Rather, he did commodity that stunned Billy further than any rage could have. He admitted his part in it. Jack conceded that he'd no way completely let go of the narrative that Billy was unstable. That every time Billy stumbled, Jack corroborated the image of himself as the responsible bone. The rescuer. The steady hand. He defended the company, but maybe at the cost of his family's quality. Billy's defenses wavered. But the damage was done. The contract was. The investor had legal standing. And if news of the secret deal blurted, challengers, especially those in the Newman sphere, would exploit it incontinently. Victor Newman would savor the chaos. The Abbotts couldn't go a public implosion. That's when Jack said the 5 words that changed everything. "You're still my family, Billy." Simple. Direct. No qualifiers. Not "you're my family," but not "despite everything." Just a memorial of blood over business. Billy's eyes flitted with commodity raw. Guilt, relief, unbelief. Jack continued, explaining that he wasn't going to destroy Billy in the press or force him out intimately. Rather, they would decompress the deal together. They would approach the investor as a united front and talk from strength. But there would be conditions. Translucency. Shared decision timber. No more secrets. It wasn't remission without consequence. It was responsibility with fidelity. Billy, visibly shaken, admitted that part of him anticipated Jack to annihilate him, to prove that business would always come before family. When Jack didn't, it forced Billy to defy commodity deeper. Perhaps the war he'd been preparing for was one he'd imagined. Outside the boardroom, word of the pressure spread snappily. Diane tasted commodity was brewing. Phyllis, ever attuned to commercial temblors, began digging for intel. Indeed, Kyle caught wind of raised voices. In Genoa City, secrets infrequently stayed buried. But what no bone anticipated was the shift that passed between the sisters after that battle. For the first time, Billy approached Jack not as a rival, but as a mate. He confessed the identity of the investor completely. He admitted the contingency triggers. He indeed revealed that he'd been tempted further than formerly, to let the deal spark just to prove he could outthink Jack. Jack heeded. And rather of tensing control, he delegated real authority to Billy in the restructuring plan. It wasn't emblematic. It was strategic trust. Together, they drafted a counterproposal that boxed the investor into a corner, offering a buyout incitement while contemporaneously motioning that any hostile move would be met with unified resistance from the entire Abbott network. The investor folded. The secret deal dissolved still. But the real story wasn't the contract. It was the recalibration of the Abbott dynamic. For times, their relationship had oscillated between resentment and reticent alliance. This time, commodity abecedarian shifted. Jack's 5 words disassembled the narrative Billy had carried since nonage, that he was expendable, secondary, constantly on exploration. Of course, this is Genoa City. Peace is no way endless. Victor would ultimately hear whispers. Challengers would smell vulnerability. Old precariousness doesn't dematerialize overnight. Billy would still scuffle with freakishness. Jack would still struggle with control. But in that boardroom, beneath John Abbott's vigilant portrayal, the sisters chose commodity different. They chose each other. And on a show defined by backstabbings, power plays, and generational grievances, that choice was seismic. Because in the ruthless world of commercial warfare and family dynasties, occasionally the most important move isn't exposure. It's mercy. And 5 simple words can rewrite a heritage. The reverberations of Jack's protestation, "You're still my family, Billy," didn't dissipate as the door to the boardroom clicked behind them. In Genoa City, walls have cognizance, and secrets have legs. The pressure, thick as the sticky summer air that pressed against the windows of Abbott dispatches, cleaved to Jack and Billy indeed as they stepped into the hall. Jack's mind contended, anatomizing every detail of the meeting, every word Billy had chosen to confess, every vacillation that had betrayed the youngish Abbott's fear of abandonment. Billy, meanwhile, was pacing, hands running through his hair, eyes zipping toward the boardroom entrance as if awaiting Diane or Phyllis to reappear at any alternate with cameras and pads. Billy's mind was a storm. Times of stock contest, professional resentment, and particular crunches coalesced into a heavy weight pressing down on his casket. The deal he'd orchestrated, secret and bold, had been meant as insurance, yes, but also as a statement. He'd wanted Jack to see that he could be further than the youngish Abbott ever living in the shadow of a family who sounded to have been born with the golden touch of intellect, charm, and business wit. Yet now, brazened by Jack's calm yet unyielding presence, the bravado atrophied. For the first time in times, Billy felt raw vulnerability, an emotion he'd infrequently admitted indeed to himself. Jack, seeing the internal earthquake in his family, chose silence over rhetoric. He'd always believed in conduct speaking louder than words, and now, in this tense, empty corridor, silence was his armament. He watched Billy's casket rise and fall with uneven breaths, noting the subtle earthquake in his hand as he tossed with the lapel of his jacket. It was a rare sight. Billy Abbott, the confident, sometimes brassy son of John Abbott, reduced to a man questioning not the request, not shareholders, but the abecedarian bond between him and his own family. Jack, Billy began, but the words faltered before they could gain shape. Jack's aspect didn't waver. Billy, I mean it. We fix this. Together. But I need the verity. Every last detail about this deal. Billy swallowed hard, the words tasting like ash. There's further than just the investor. I didn't want to drag you into it until I had everything lined up. I allowed. I could manage it myself. I allowed. I was guarding the family. And perhaps I just wanted to prove I could do it alone. Jack's jaw tensed, a admixture of frustration and reticent admiration fluttering across his face. Guarding the family or guarding your pride? Billy dithered, eyes zipping over, shame creeping into the edges of his generally confident expression. Both, he admitted eventually. I wanted to make you see that I'm not the same Billy you used to have to babysit. I can play the game. I can win. Jack exhaled sluggishly, the sound heavy with the weight of times and anticipation. Billy, you've always had implicit. But eventuality doesn't mean anything without trust. And trust is earned, not manipulated through secret contracts or hidden backdoors. The hallway was silent, save for the soft hum of the air exertion and the distant chatter from the bottom below. Jack's eyes softened. You're my family, Billy. I shouldn't have to say it, but I did. And now we've a choice. We either destroy what little credibility we've left with this trick or we turn it into commodity that benefits the Abbotts without compromising our integrity. Billy looked up, the weight of Jack's words settling like a gravestone in his casket. You really mean that? Jack jounced formally. Every word. But understand this isn't remission without conditions. The coming way are critical. Every move you make from then on out will determine whether we're united or we collapse under the weight of our own miscalculations. Billy exhaled sprucely, the pressure in his shoulders eventually loosening, if only slightly. Also I'll follow your lead. I'll undo the contingencies. I'll call the investor and restructure it on our terms. But he dithered, searching Jack's face for any hint of mistrustfulness. I need you to let me take real responsibility this time. Not just play catch-up. Jack considered this precisely. He'd always plodded with control, a assignment sorrowfully drilled into him by his father and latterly corroborated through innumerous battles with Victor Newman. Letting Billy step completely into the limelight, letting him make miscalculations, risk the company, threat character was an intimidating prospect. Yet Jack understood that true trust needed threat. It needed faith that Billy, when cornered and challenged, could rise rather than deteriorate. Each right, Jack said eventually, the decision solidifying with the weight of authority. You take the lead on restructuring the deal. But I want daily updates. Full translucency. No more secrets, no further retired clauses, no further surprises. Billy jounced, determination hardening his features. Agreed. Daily updates. Jack placed a hand on Billy's shoulder, a rare gesture of both consolation and authority. Good. Now let's fix this before it becomes public and before anyone differently finds out. Because in Genoa City, formerly word leaks, it no way dies still. Billy turned toward the elevator, a new sense of purpose in his stride. Jack followed, apprehensive that this was further than a commercial initiative. This was the morning of a recalibration, a subtle shift in the Abbott power dynamic that might have impacts for times to come. As the sisters worked to restructure the investor deal, the megacity itself sounded to hum with expectation. Outside the satiny glass halls of Abbott dispatches, Genoa City's thoroughfares carried whispers, rumors, and the ever-present scent of conspiracy. Diane Jenkins, always attuned to shifts in commercial alliances and family feuds, had been covering the situation with keen interest. She knew the balance of power was delicate, and any misstep could be abused for both particular and professional gain. Phyllis Summers, who had her own history with both Abbotts, had also caught wind of the pressure. Ever opportunistic, she began casting strategies to use the brotherly disharmony to her advantage. Her suspicion told her that Billy's freakishness could be exploited, that Jack's controlled wrathfulness might be his death if pushed too far. She awaited for the right moment, observing from a distance, as the sisters navigated the unfaithful waters of commercial form and domestic fidelity. Meanwhile, Kyle Abbott, caught in the crossfire of stock dynamics and commercial plots, scuffled with his own sense of responsibility. The whispers he eavesdropped in the hallway suggested that the deal's implicit fallout could affect him directly, moreover as a goat, a middleman, or a substantiation to the unraveling of Abbott's stability. His instincts told him that his coming moves would need careful consideration. Misstep could permanently damage his standing within the family business. In the weeks that followed, Jack and Billy worked lifelessly. Calls to the investor were made, accommodations conducted, and clauses rewritten. Every discussion was a delicate cotillion of influence, persuasion, and subtle trouble. Jack's tolerance was tested constantly as Billy plodded with moments of mistrustfulness and moping arrogance. Yet, with every chain, their bond subtly strengthened not through verbal declarations, but through participated action, collective responsibility, and the recognition that family couldn't be a battleground without casualties. The investor, originally resistant, began to smell the consanity between the Abbott sisters. What had been an implicit wedge hanging to fracture the company rather came a symbol of adaptability. Jack and Billy's concerted authority, corroborated by their transparent approach, created influence that the stranger couldn't ignore. Eventually, the investor accepted the restructuring, fating that battle would only lead to expensive detainments and public exposure. As the dust settled, Jack and Billy stood formally again in the boardroom, the same space that had witnessed the original disclosure. The pressure had eased, replaced by a conservative sanguinity. The contract was annulled. Trust, while not completely restored, was revivified in small, meaningful supplements. They had survived the storm, and in doing so, had forged a fragile but promising alliance. Yet Genoa City had its way of reminding everyone that peace is temporary. Victor Newman would soon hear whispers of the Abbott conciliation. Challengers would smell vulnerability. Musketeers and adversaries likewise would test the new dynamic. The Abbotts had achieved a palm, yes, but it was only one battle in an ongoing war of power, heritage, and family drama. Jack, reflecting on the weeks of fermentation, understood that the true assignment was no way about commercial maneuvering or legal wrangling. It was about connection, fidelity, and the amenability to forgive without erasing responsibility. Billy, for his part, had discovered that proving oneself didn't bear treason. It needed courage, honesty, and the modesty to accept guidance. For now, the Abbott sisters walked a path together, apprehensive that the trip ahead would be fraught with challenges. But for the first time in times, they faced it side by side, sisters, not rivals. And in Genoa City, that was a palm worth further than any shareholder tip, further than any request gain, further than any contract could ever give.